Welcome to the 1 Hour Guide by NL Lethu. Today on the deep dive, we're doing what we do best, taking a formidable stack of sources, extracting the most potent nuggets of knowledge, and serving them up to you. Think of it as a shortcut to being truly well-informed. Our mission today is to unearth the profound, actionable insights from a book that has genuinely changed how millions think about progress and self-improvement. James Clear's Atomic Habits. This deep dive is part of the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu series, meticulously crafted to bring you practical, actionable wisdom that, well, could transform your life.
And what's particularly compelling about Atomic Habits is that it isn't just theory, not at all. The powerful lessons within it, they stem from a profound personal journey, a real-life crucible, you could say, that shaped James Clear's understanding of how tiny changes can lead to remarkable results. That's precisely where we'll begin our exploration today.
Absolutely. Let's unpack this with James Clear's own compelling origin story. Picture this. It's 2002, and he's a promising high school baseball player. Suddenly, a teammate's baseball bat accidentally swings back, hitting him directly in the face. The impact was, well, absolutely catastrophic. He suffered a broken nose, multiple facial fractures, and his brain began to swell rapidly. This led to seizures, a complete loss of consciousness, and he even stopped breathing for a bit. It was so severe that he had to be airlifted by helicopter to a larger hospital in Cincinnati.
It's really astonishing how close he came to severe, lasting brain damage. When he briefly regained consciousness at the local hospital, his memory was severely compromised. He thought it was 1998, not 2002. He misidentified the president. And perhaps most chillingly, it took him 10 agonizing seconds, apparently, to remember his own mother's name. This really highlights the incredible fragility of our cognitive functions, doesn't it? And how easily they can be disrupted by physical trauma.
And the immediate aftermath was just as jarring. He temporarily lost his sense of smell. As a test, a nurse asked him to blow his nose, and due to air force through his facial fractures, his left eye bulged outward. It was held in place only by his eyelid and the optic nerve. It's a truly vivid, almost gruesome image of the severity of his injury.
Yeah, that kind of sudden, profound physical trauma can utterly shatter one's sense of self and capabilities. When your body and mind betray you in such a dramatic fashion, your identity as a functional, capable individual is just deeply shaken. Clear describes it as everything being put on pause. Just stopped.
Exactly. The following months were incredibly hard. He experienced double vision for weeks, making it impossible to see straight, a real struggle. It took a full 8 months before he could even drive a car again. He underwent physical therapy just to relearn basic motor patterns, like walking in a straight line, things we take for granted. Despite his determination, he openly admitted to feeling deeply depressed and, overwhelmed during this challenging recovery.
And this brings up a powerful question for all of us, really. How do you rebound from such a significant setback, especially when it impacts something as fundamental as your physical and cognitive abilities, and then hits a core passion like baseball?
And baseball was a massive part of his identity. Huge. His father had played minor league baseball, and James dreamed of professional play himself. But his return to the field after the injury was, in his own words, humiliating. During his junior year of high school, he was the only junior cut from the varsity team, sent down to junior varsity. He recounts crying in his car, feeling utterly defeated, like it was all over.
This was such a critical juncture in his story, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He faced a profound personal and public failure in an area central to his self-image. Yet it was precisely at this low point that he found his turning point. And importantly, not in some grand gesture, but in seemingly insignificant choices.
That turning point truly arrived 2 years after his injury, when he started college at Denison University. He made the baseball team, yes, but he was right at the bottom of the roster as a freshman. But instead of obsessing over immediate athletic success, he focused on getting his life in order first. Small things. This meant building very small, consistent habits.
And this perfectly illustrates the compounding power of small changes right from the very beginning. While his peers were, staying up late playing video games, he committed to early sleep. A simple thing. In a typically messy college dorm, he kept his room meticulously neat. These might seem trivial, almost unimportant, but they gave him a sense of control and confidence, which then rippled into his academics. He earned straight A's his first year. Amazing.
And he didn't stop there. He started a habit of lifting weights multiple times a week. Consistency. He bulked up from about 170 to 200 pounds. The outcomes were remarkable. By sophomore season, he was a starting pitcher. By junior year, team captain and made the all-conference team. By his senior year, all these small, consistent habits really, truly paid off.
It's fascinating how these seemingly small, consistent actions, performed meticulously over time, transformed his physical and academic performance. 6 years after that traumatic injury, James Clear was selected as the top male athlete at Denison University and named to the ESPN Academic All-America team. It's just a powerful testament to how tiny actions can lead to significant, tangible achievements.
He never played professionally, no, but he achieved something arguably more profound. He fulfilled his potential. And this deeply personal experience taught him a critical lesson, one that forms the bedrock of his book. He says, changes that seem small and unimportant at first will compound into remarkable results if you're willing to stick with them for years. End quote two. He realized the quality of our lives fundamentally depends on the quality of our habits. Simple as that. With better habits, truly anything is possible.
This powerful insight introduces the core premise of atomic habits. It suggests that success isn't about some sudden miraculous transformation, but rather about a gradual evolution, a slow burn. It's a long series of small wins and tiny breakthroughs that accumulate over time. Clear applied this exact strategy when he started his own business and embarked on writing this very book. This sets the stage beautifully for a deep dive into the science behind these tiny changes' remarkable results.
Absolutely. And speaking of remarkable results from tiny changes, let's jump into part one. The foundation why tiny changes make a big difference. We're kicking it off with Chapter 1, which lays out the surprising power of atomic habits, starting with a fantastic real-world example, the story of British cycling. For nearly 100 years, they were, frankly, pretty mediocre, underwhelming. They'd won only a single Olympic gold medal since 1908 and had never secured a Tour de France victory in 110 years. Their performance was so underwhelming that one of Europe's top bike manufacturers even refused to sell bikes to them. They were worried it would actually hurt their sales if the Brits were seen using their gear. Imagine that.
Yeah, the central question here is just how do you turn a century of ingrained failure into such unprecedented world-dominating success? It seems almost impossible, doesn't it, for an organization so deeply entrenched in mediocrity to suddenly become the best?
Well, in 2003, they hired a new performance director named Dave Brailsford. His approach was revolutionary, built on a strategy he called the aggregation of marginal gains. The philosophy was simple yet profound. Break down every single thing that goes into riding a bike and then improve each element by just 1%. Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Right. A key insight here is the sheer breadth of their focus. It wasn't just the obvious stuff. They didn't just look at the bikes themselves. Brailsford and his team understood that performance is a holistic system influenced by countless minor factors. Everything matters.
That's exactly right. They started with the expected. Redesigned bike seats for comfort or testing fabrics in a wind tunnel for aerodynamics. Standard stuff. But they truly excelled by finding these 1% improvements in overlooked and often unexpected areas. Get this. They even hired a surgeon to teach each rider the best way to wash their hands to reduce the chances of catching a cold. And in a detail that sounds almost obsessive, they painted the inside of the team truck white.
White. Why white?
So they could spot tiny bits of dust that might otherwise go unnoticed, but could subtly degrade the performance of the finely tuned bikes.
Wow, that's next level attention to detail. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about eliminating every tiny point of friction or inefficiency, no matter how small or seemingly unrelated it might appear. It's a truly holistic view of performance, demonstrating that greatness isn't achieved by one big leap, but by hundreds of tiny deliberate steps.
And the outcome was nothing short of remarkable. Truly stunning. In the 10-year span from 2007 to 2017, British cyclists went from perennial underperformers to absolute titans. They won an astonishing 178 World Championships, secured 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals, and captured 5 Tour de France victories. It's widely regarded as the most successful run in cycling history, all from a commitment to these tiny marginal gains.
That success story beautifully illustrates the math of 1% improvement. We so often overestimate the importance of one defining moment, don't we? That big breakthrough. And we dramatically underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. Most people mistakenly believe that massive success requires massive action, big leaps.
But the math tells a very different story, one that highlights the exponential power of compounding. If you can get just 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the end of that year. 37 times. Conversely, if you get 1% worse each day for a year, you'll decline nearly down to 0. Scary. What begins as a small win or a minor setback truly accumulates into something far more significant over time.
And this compounding effect isn't just about sports or mathematics. It permeates every aspect of life, both positively and, crucially, negatively. Knowledge compounds, for example. Each book you read doesn't just teach you something new, it opens up different ways of thinking about old ideas. Your productivity compounds as well. Accomplishing one extra task a day might seem small, insignificant even, but over an entire career, it counts for a lot. This brings up an important question for you, the listener. Are you compounding positively or negatively in your own life right now? Where are those 1% changes happening?
And this brings us to what progress is really like, often depicted by what James Clear calls the plateau of latent potential. Imagine an ice cube sitting on a table. The room is cold, say 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Slowly the temperature rises. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31 degrees. Nothing happens. The ice cube is still an ice cube, solid. Then at 32 degrees it melts. A seemingly insignificant 1 degree shift, no different from the others before it, has unlocked a huge change.
That analogy is so powerful because we often expect progress to be linear, right? We put in effort and we expect to see results directly proportional to that effort, a straight line upwards. But breakthrough moments are rarely sudden. They are almost always the result of many previous actions building up the potential required to unleash a major change. Think about bamboo. It grows roots for 5 years underground, unseen, before suddenly exploding 90 feet into the air in just 6 weeks. All that stored potential.
We frequently find ourselves in this valley of disappointment in the early and middle stages of any quest. It's frustrating. It's when you're putting in the work day after day, week after week, and it doesn't feel like you're going anywhere, like you're stuck. You might feel like your changes are completely ineffective, just wasted effort.
But this is the critical insight. Your work isn't wasted, it's being stored, it's accumulating. All the visible change happens at that critical threshold. When you finally break through that plateau of latent potential, people on the outside will often call it an overnight success. They only see the dramatic event, not all the painstaking, consistent work that preceded it. But you know that it's the effort you put in long ago, when it seemed that you weren't making any discernible progress, that truly made the jump possible. This is a critical insight for anyone listening who wants those aha moments but feels overwhelmed. It's about trusting the process, even when the visible results aren't immediately apparent.
That's a perfect segue into part two. Forget about goals, focus on systems instead, and identity-based habits. It's a concept that directly challenges prevailing wisdom. Most of us are taught that the best way to achieve what we want is to set specific, actionable goals.
SMART goals, right? James Clear says he approached his habits this way for years, setting goals for grades, gym lifts, business profits. He succeeded at some, sure, but failed at many. This led him to a profound realization. His results had very little to do with the goals he set, and nearly everything to do with the systems he followed.
Right, and a key distinction here, popularized by cartoonist Scott Adams of Dilbert fame, is that goals are about the results you want to achieve, the outcome, while systems are about the processes that lead to those results, the input. If you're a basketball coach, your goal might be to win a championship. That's the big prize. But your system is how you recruit players, manage assistant coaches, conduct practice. It's the daily grind, the work that makes the difference. So if a basketball coach completely ignored the goal of winning a championship and just focused entirely on what the team does at practice each day, would they still get results?
According to Clear, absolutely.
As three-time Super Bowl winner Bill Walsh put it, the score takes care of itself. Love that. The same principle applies to any area of life. If you want better results, you're often better off forgetting about setting goals and focusing on your system instead.
This brings up an important question for you to reflect on. Are your goals dictating your actions, or are your carefully designed systems doing the work? Goals are excellent for setting direction, no doubt. They point the way. But it's the systems that actually make consistent progress possible. And there are a handful of problems that arise when we spend too much time thinking about goals and not enough time designing our systems.
Indeed, there are several significant problems with the goals-first mindset. First, winners and losers often have the exact same goals. Everyone wants to win the championship, right? We tend to fall prey to survivorship bias. We focus on the successful ones and mistakenly assume their ambitious goals led to their success. But we overlook the countless others who had identical goals but ultimately failed. The goal wasn't the differentiator. Second, achieving a goal only changes your life for the moment. It's temporary. The results themselves aren't the underlying problem. What we truly need to change are the systems that cause those results. If you only solve problems at the results level, treating the symptom, the change is temporary. For permanent improvement, you must solve problems at the systems level, the root cause. As Clear states, fix the inputs and the outputs will fix themselves. So clear.
This is absolutely crucial. True long-term thinking is goalless thinking. It's not about any single accomplishment, but about an endless cycle of refinement and continuous improvement, always getting better. Ultimately, it is your unwavering commitment to the process, to the system, that will determine your progress over time. As the author powerfully summarizes, and this really stuck with me, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems.
Wow.
Powerful stuff. And that brings us to what might be the deepest level of change: identity-based habits. James Clear highlights 3 layers of behavior change. There's outcome change, which is about what you get, the results. Then process change, which is about what you do, the actions. And finally, identity change, which is about what you believe, who you are. Most people start by focusing on outcomes. I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to write a book.
Right. But a key insight here is the sheer power of identity-based habits, where you shift your focus. You focus on who you wish to become. This is a fundamental reversal of the typical approach. It flips the script. Clear illustrates this perfectly with the example of someone trying to quit smoking. Compare saying, I'm trying to quit smoking, which is outcome-based, rooted in the struggle, versus saying, no thanks, I'm not a smoker, which is identity-based. It's a statement of fact about who you are now. That second statement, I'm not a smoker, signals a profound shift in self-image. Smoking was part of their former life, their old identity, not their current one. They no longer identify as someone who smokes.
And behavior that is incongruent with your self-image simply will not last. It feels wrong, inauthentic. It's incredibly difficult to change your habits if you never change the underlying beliefs that led to your past behavior. You can have a new goal and a new plan, sure, but if you haven't changed who you are at a fundamental level, any improvements will likely be temporary. You'll revert.
The author shares a brilliant personal example of quitting nail biting, something many struggle with. He tried everything, apparently, but what finally worked was getting a manicure.
A manicure? Really?
Yeah. It wasn't the cost, he says. The manicure just made his nails look really nice for the first time. Suddenly, he was proud of his fingernails. He wanted to maintain them. And he hasn't chewed them since. That pride, that shift in how he saw himself, made all the difference.
That's the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation, isn't it? When a habit becomes an undeniable part of your identity, it's one thing to say, I'm the type of person who wants this. That's aspiration. It's something entirely different, much more powerful, to say, I'm the type of person who is this. That's identity. The more pride you have in a particular aspect of your identity, the more motivated you will be to maintain the habits associated with it. Pride truly becomes a fierce motivator.
So true behavior change is ultimately identity change. It's the deepest layer. Motivation might give you the initial push to start a habit, sure, but the only reason you'll stick with it in the long run is if it becomes part of who you are. The goal is not merely to read a book, but to become a reader. Not just to run a marathon, but to become a runner. See the difference?
Absolutely. And this raises an important question for you. What stories are you consistently telling yourself about who you are? When you repeat these stories for years, they solidify into mental grooves, into beliefs, and you might begin to resist certain actions because, well, that's just not who I am. Identity conflict is often the biggest barrier to positive change. Good habits might make rational sense, but if they clash with your self-image, you will struggle to put them into action consistently.
And for progress to occur, you need to be willing to unlearn some things, perhaps, and continuously edit your beliefs to upgrade and expand your identity. It's not fixed. It's an ongoing process of becoming.
Exactly, because your identity is largely formed by your habits. They are the evidence. Every single action you take is like a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Each rep, each page, each call. James Clear, for instance, didn't start out identifying as a writer. He became one. How? By publishing articles every Monday and Thursday for years. Consistent action. As the evidence of his consistent actions grew, so did his identity as a writer. It became undeniable. This highlights that habits aren't just, life hacks or productivity tricks. They're fundamentally about becoming someone. Quite literally, you become your habits.
Okay, let's move on to part 3. The core framework, understanding the habit loop and law 1. Make it obvious. James Clear explains that habits are essentially automatic solutions to recurring problems in our environment. Mental shortcuts. He illustrates this with Edward Thorndike's classic cat experiment from the early 20th century. Cats were placed in puzzle boxes, and over repeated trials, they learned to escape faster and faster. They eventually cut straight to the solution, the lever that opened the door. All the useless movements faded away, and only the useful actions were reinforced.
Right. This exemplifies what James Clear calls the feedback loop behind all human behavior. Try, fail, learn, try differently. It's a constant cycle. As habits form, the level of activity in the brain actually decreases. It becomes more efficient. The brain learns to lock in on the cues that predict success and tunes out everything else that's irrelevant. It automates.
Habits are fundamentally mental shortcuts learned from experience. That's the core idea. Whenever the conditions are right, your brain draws on this memory of what worked before and automatically applies the same solution. The conscious mind is a bottleneck, right? It can only focus on one problem at a time, really. Habits, by reducing cognitive load, free up mental capacity, allowing you to allocate your attention to more essential or novel tasks.
And this brings up an important question. Do habits actually restrict freedom, or do they create it? It's a common concern. Clear argues quite convincingly that habits do not restrict freedom, they create it. Think about it. People who don't have their habits handled often have the least amount of freedom. Without good financial habits, you'll constantly struggle for the next dollar. Without good health habits, you always feel low energy. If you're constantly forced to make decisions about simple, fundamental tasks, you have less time and mental space for free thinking, creativity, and tackling new challenges. By making the fundamentals automatic, you free your mind for more complex and interesting things.
Clear breaks down the process of habit formation into a simple four-step habit loop. First, there's the cue. This is the trigger that initiates a behavior, a bit of information that predicts a potential reward. Your mind is constantly scanning for these hints. Second, the craving. This is the motivational force behind every habit. The why. What you crave isn't the habit itself, but the change in state it delivers, the outcome or feeling. You don't crave smoking a cigarette, you crave the feeling of relief it provides. Every craving is a desire to change your internal state.
And third, the response. This is the actual habit you perform, which can be a thought or an action. The what. Whether a response occurs depends on your motivation, how much friction is associated with the behavior, how easy or hard it is, and your actual ability to perform it. Finally, the fourth step is the reward. This satisfies the craving and crucially reinforces the link between the cue and the behavior, teaching your brain to repeat it in the future. It completes the loop.
This cue, craving, response, reward sequence forms a powerful neurological feedback loop that runs constantly, allowing automatic habits to form over time. And based on this fundamental loop, Clear developed the 4 laws of behavior change for creating good habits. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. And of course, there are inversions for breaking bad habits, a really elegant framework.
Which brings us neatly to Chapter 4 and the first law, make it obvious. Our brains are essentially prediction machines, constantly noticing what's important and sorting through details, often unconsciously. Think about highly specialized professionals, paramedics instantly recognizing the subtle signs of a heart attack, or museum curators discerning faint clues that reveal a piece of art is fake. They've trained their non-conscious recognition.
Right, and a key insight here is that you don't even need to be consciously aware of the cue for a habit to begin. You can spot an opportunity and take action without dedicating conscious attention to it. It just happens. This makes habits incredibly useful, of course, but also potentially dangerous. As habits become automatic, your actions often fall under the direction of your non-conscious mind. You simply fall into old patterns before you even realize what's happening.
Exactly, unless someone points it out or you make a conscious effort to observe yourself. As Carl Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Powerful words.
So the first step is always awareness. We need to get a handle on our current habits, which is harder than it sounds because most habits operate below the level of conscious thought. To do this, Clear recommends the habit scorecard. Just list out your daily habits and rate them as positive, negative, or neutral. Simple awareness.
There's also that fascinating example from the Japanese railway system. They use a ritual called pointing and calling. Conductors point at signals, speedometers, schedules, and call them out aloud. Other staff point at the platform edge and declare all clear. This ritual makes them hyper-aware of every single detail, forcing conscious attention, and it dramatically reduces errors on their complex system. It's a method to bring conscious attention to your current habits.
Okay, so once you're aware of your habits, how do you make the good ones more obvious, more likely to happen? Clear introduces a really practical strategy called implementation intentions. This is basically a simple plan for when and where you will perform a new habit, pre-planning.
And research has consistently shown the effectiveness of implementation intentions. They work. Studies on exercise, for instance, found that simply making a specific plan for when and where you will exercise more than doubled participation rates compared to control groups. Huge difference. The formula is beautifully simple. I will behavior at time and location. N, So you might say, I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my kitchen, or I will exercise for 1 hour at 5 p.m. in my local gym. Specificity is key.
Another powerful strategy for obvious cues, one he learned from Stanford professor B.J. Fogg, is habit stacking. It's essentially about linking a new habit you want to form to an old, established one you already do automatically. Piggybacking. The habit stacking formula is just as effective. After current habit, I will new habit.
And this works best when it's highly specific. Connect it tightly. Instead of a vague intention like, when I take a break for lunch, I will do 10 push-ups, James Clear refined his own habit stack to be much clearer. When I close my laptop for lunch, I will do 10 push-ups next to my desk. The ambiguity is gone. The cue is immediate and clear. The more tightly bound the new habit is to a specific immediate cue, the more likely you are to actually act.
Other examples could be, when I see a set of stairs, I will take them instead of the elevator. Simple rule. Or for finances. When I want to buy something over $100, I will wait 24 hours before purchasing. Builds in a pause. These small linked actions make the new behavior feel like a natural extension of your existing routine rather than a whole new effort.
So the first law of behavior change is all about making the cues for your good habits obvious and visible. Strategies like implementation intentions and habit stacking are among the most practical ways to create clear, undeniable cues and design a specific plan for when and where to take action. It removes the guesswork.
Okay, let's move on to part 4. The second law, make it attractive. This involves digging deeper into our environment and the science of desire. We circle back to chapter 6 here with Dr. Ann Thorndike's hospital cafeteria experiment. Remember that. She wanted to improve eating habits without lecturing people or relying on willpower. Subtle changes. So she and her colleagues redesigned the cafeteria's choice architecture. Basically, how options were presented. They moved bottled water right next to the cash registers in various food stations, making it super convenient. Meanwhile, soda remained in the primary refrigerators, slightly less accessible. The result: over the next 3 months, soda sales dropped by 11.4%, and bottled water sales increased by a whopping 25.8%. And nobody was given any instructions or told what to do. The environment did the work.
It's a perfect illustration of how our environment is the invisible hand that subtly shapes human behavior. As psychologist Kurt Lewin famously put it, behavior is a function of the person in their environment, often written as B equals FPE. Humans naturally gravitate toward the most obvious and convenient option. It's just easier. This is also why products placed at eye level on supermarket shelves or on those end caps sell significantly more. Visibility and ease.
We tend to think we're always in control of our choices, don't we? We assume if we choose water over soda, it's purely our willpower triumphing. But the truth is, many of our daily actions are shaped not by purposeful drive or conscious decision, but simply by the most obvious option available. People drink Bud Light because it's everywhere. They go to Starbucks because there seems to be one on every corner. Our environment exerts a powerful, often subconscious influence on us.
So how does attraction work at a deeper neurological level, often beneath our conscious awareness? What makes us want something? This is where dopamine comes into play. It's a key neurotransmitter. Scientists used to think dopamine was all about the pleasure of reward, the liking part. But what they discovered, and this is crucial, is that dopamine is released not just when you experience pleasure, but crucially when you anticipate it, the wanting part. Gambling addicts show a spike in dopamine right before they place a bet, not just after they win, if they win. Cocaine addicts get a surge when they simply see the powder. Whenever you predict that an opportunity will be rewarding, your dopamine levels spike in anticipation, driving your motivation to act. It's the engine of desire.
Beyond these individual neurological drivers, our habits are also deeply, profoundly shaped by the people around us, our social environment. Let's look at Chapter 9, which explores leveraging social influence, starting with the incredible story of the Polgar sisters, Susan, Sophia, and Judith, 3 chess prodigies. Their father, Laszlo Polgar, firmly believed that a genius is not born, but is educated and trained. Nature versus nurture, heavily on the nurture side. He designed a home environment in Hungary completely obsessed with chess, filling it with chess books, pictures of famous matches, and even homeschooling his daughters to maximize chess study.
What's truly fascinating here is that despite such an atypical and intensive childhood, the sisters themselves claimed their chess-centric upbringing was not grueling, but genuinely enjoyable, fun even. Their obsession with chess was completely normal within their unique family culture, making it highly attractive to them. Sophia was even caught playing chess in the bathroom in the middle of the night. When told to leave the pieces alone, she reportedly replied, "Daddy, they won't leave me alone." The game had become part of them.
This illustrates a fundamental truth about human behavior. We are herd animals. Deep down, we have an innate desire to fit in, to belong, and to earn the respect and approval of our peers. It's wired into us. This is deeply ingrained from our tribal history. Being separated from the tribe was essentially a death sentence for our ancestors. As a result, one of the deepest human desires is to belong, and this ancient preference powerfully influences our modern behavior, often without us realizing it. We tend to imitate habits from three key social groups. First, the close. Proximity matters immensely. We pick up habits from our family, friends, colleagues, the people we spend the most time with. Second, we imitate the many. When we're unsure how to act, we look to the group for guidance. What is everyone else doing? This is the power of social proof, think Amazon or Yelp reviews. And third, we imitate the powerful. We are inherently driven to pursue status, prestige, and respect. So we often try to copy the behavior of successful or high-status individuals.
So, to truly make your desired habits more attractive using social influence, James Clear suggests you should actively seek out and join a culture where, 1, your desired behavior is the normal behavior, and 2, you already have something in common with the group. Find your tribe. Think of something like nerd fitness, for example. It specifically helps nerds, misfits, and mutants get healthy by leveraging their mutual interests, like Star Wars or video games. This transforms what might feel like a lonely personal quest into a shared one, embedding a new identity within a supportive community. As Clear says, nothing sustains motivation better than belonging to the tribe.
Okay, and finally for this section, in Chapter 10, we explore making bad habits unattractive, focusing on addressing their underlying motives. This is the inversion of Law 2. Make it unattractive. How do we make the bad stuff less appealing? Clear recounts visiting Istanbul and meeting a group of Turkish friends. He noticed about half of them had managed to quit smoking, which is notoriously difficult. They largely credited a book called Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking.
Right, and a key insight here is that the book apparently doesn't rely on willpower or scare tactics, like showing pictures of diseased lungs. Instead, it systematically reframes your perception of smoking, making it seem utterly ridiculous, pointless, and even disgusting. If you genuinely believe smoking brings you zero benefits, only negatives, then you simply have no reason to smoke. It changes the craving at its root by changing the associated feelings.
This ties into the idea that every behavior, good or bad, has a surface-level craving and a deeper underlying motive. Wanting to eat tacos might be a surface craving, sure, but the underlying motive is fulfilling hunger, obtaining energy.
Your habits are essentially modern-day solutions to ancient, fundamental human desires. Tinder fulfills the desire for love and reproduction. Browsing Facebook satisfies the craving to connect and belong. Checking Google reduces uncertainty. The underlying motives behind human behavior remain remarkably constant across history. Only the specific habits we use to satisfy them change with technology and culture. And crucially, your behavior heavily depends on how you interpret the events and cues around you. It's subjective. Two people can look at the same cigarette. One feels an intense urge to smoke, while the other is repulsed by the thought. The cue is the same, the interpretation is different. The cause of your habits is really the prediction your brain makes about the outcome, which precedes the feeling or craving. So how do you actively make bad habits unattractive? One powerful technique is to reframe your mindset. Change the story you tell yourself. Instead of thinking I have to wake up early for work, try reframing it to I get to wake up early for work, or I get to cook dinner for my family. By simply changing one word, you shift your perception from seeing these behaviors as burdens, as chores, to viewing them as opportunities, as privileges. Both versions of reality are true, in a way. You have to do those things, perhaps, but you also get to do them. You can find evidence for whatever mindset you choose to adopt.
That's a great point. And this brings up an important question. How can you apply this reframe technique to your own daily challenges or disliked tasks? For someone practicing meditation, the frustration of a wandering mind becomes an opportunity to practice compassionately returning to the breath. Pre-game jitters before a big presentation can be reframed not as debilitating nervousness, but as excitement and an adrenaline rush that will actually help you concentrate and perform better. It's about channeling the feeling. You can also create a motivation ritual, a sort of Pavlovian conditioning for yourself. Ed Lattimore, a boxer and writer, noticed his focus increased just by putting on his headphones, even if there was no music playing. He had conditioned himself to associate headphones with focused work. Similarly, James Clear developed a specific pre-game baseball ritual involving stretching and throwing that reliably put him into a competitive and focused game mode.
You can adapt this strategy for nearly any purpose. If you want to feel happier more often, find something that reliably makes you truly happy, maybe petting your dog or listening to a specific song. Then, create a short, unique routine you perform every single time right before doing that enjoyable activity. Perhaps 3 deep breaths and a smile. Eventually, that short routine itself becomes a cue associated with feeling happy, and you can trigger that positive emotional state anytime you need a boost just by performing the ritual. You've conditioned the response.
That brings us to part 5, the third law, make it easy, how to reduce friction. Voltaire famously wrote, "The best is the enemy of the good." And it's so true for habits. We often get bogged down trying to find the absolute optimal plan, the fastest way to lose weight, a perfect program to build muscle that we never actually get around to taking action. Analysis paralysis. This highlights a crucial distinction James Clear makes, the difference between being in motion and taking action.
Yeah, this is a really important one. It brings up a question for all of us. Are you truly taking action or merely staying in motion? Motion involves planning, strategizing, learning, like outlining articles, researching diet plans online for hours, talking about what you're going to do. These things feel productive, but they don't produce results on their own. Action, on the other hand, is the type of behavior that directly delivers an outcome. Actually, writing the article, eating the healthy meal, making the sales call, that's where results happen. Motion can feel like progress, sure, but it's often just a comfortable way to delay the potential risk of failure or criticism that comes with actual action. When preparation becomes a form of procrastination, you need to recognize it and switch gears. You need to be practicing, not just planning, doing, not just preparing to do.
And the very act of repeating a habit, taking action consistently, actually leads to clear physical changes in the brain. It rewires you. Musicians develop larger cerebellums involved in motor control. Mathematicians show increased gray matter in relevant areas. London taxi drivers famously develop larger hippocampus mampi, a region crucial for spatial memory from navigating the city's complex streets. And interestingly, that area even decreases in size if they retire. Use it or lose it.
Exactly. Like muscles responding to weight training, specific brain regions adapt and change based on how they're used. Repetition builds the pathway. All habits follow a similar trajectory from effortful practice, where you have to think about every step, to automaticity. Automaticity is the ability to perform a behavior without consciously thinking about each step as the non-conscious mind takes over. It becomes second nature. This is what James Clear refers to as crossing the habit line, a threshold beyond which a behavior becomes more or less automatic, requiring little conscious effort.
This concept connects directly to what Clear calls the law of least effort in Chapter 12. It's a fundamental principle of human behavior. Human nature, and indeed most animal nature, fundamentally follows the law of least effort. Given two similar options, we naturally gravitate toward the one requiring the least amount of work, the least energy expenditure.
And energy is precious, right? Our brains are wired over millennia to conserve it whenever possible, survival dependent on it. So this isn't necessarily a sign of laziness. It's often a smart, efficient strategy programmed into us. The less energy a habit requires to get started, the more likely it is to actually occur.
This explains why habits like mindlessly scrolling on our phones, checking email constantly, or watching TV can consume so much of our time. They require very low motivation or effort to initiate and are incredibly convenient, always available.
Every habit, even a good one, can be thought of as an obstacle standing between you and what you truly want. Dieting is an obstacle to getting fit. Writing is an obstacle to finishing a book. The greater the obstacle meaning, the more difficult the habit is to perform, the more friction there is between you and your desired end state. This is why it's absolutely crucial to make your good habits so easy, so frictionless, that you'll do them even when you don't feel like it, even on your low motivation days.
Think of it like trying to get water through a bent garden hose. You can try to force more water through by cranking up the valve that's like trying to muster more motivation or willpower. It's hard work.
Or you can simply remove the bend in the hose and let the water flow naturally with minimal effort. That's reducing the friction. Much smarter.
So how do you achieve more with less effort? Environment design is key, a principle we touched on earlier, but is central here. Make the cues for your good habits obvious, sure, but also make the actions themselves easier. Place your new habits along the path of your existing daily routine. You're more likely to go to the gym if it's literally on your way to or from work. Less detour, less friction. Even more effectively, reduce friction within your immediate environment, your home or office.
Right, like the Japanese concept of lean production, or kaizen. It often focused on addition by subtraction, relentlessly removing waste and inefficiency from the production process. They would redesign workspaces so workers didn't have to waste tiny amounts of time twisting or reaching for tools. Those seconds add up. This addition by subtraction principle is really powerful for personal habits too. By systematically identifying and eliminating the points of friction that sap our time and energy, we can achieve more with less effort. Think about all the habit-forming products and services out there. Meal delivery reduces the friction of grocery shopping and cooking. Dating apps reduce the friction of meeting new people. Ride-sharing reduces the friction of getting a taxi. Companies are constantly trying to automate, eliminate, or simplify steps to make their products easier to use. Fewer form fields, fewer clicks, voice activation, all about reducing friction.
The central idea here is crystal clear. Design an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. Make the path of least resistance the path to good habits. Much of the battle of building better habits comes down to finding clever ways to reduce the friction associated with our good habits and, conversely, increase the friction associated with our bad ones.
This leads us nicely into the strategy of priming your environment for future use, setting yourself up for success. Oswald Knuckles, an IT developer Clear mentions, practices resetting the room after each use. He puts the remote control back on the TV stand, arranges the pillows on the couch, throws out any trash, even wipes down the toilet while the shower warms up. The purpose isn't just tidiness, though that's nice. It's about preparing the environment for the next action, making good habits the default, the path of least resistance for his future self.
So applying this, if you want to draw more, don't hide your pencils and sketch pad away in a drawer. Put them right out on your desk, ready to go. If you want to exercise first thing in the morning, lay out your workout clothes, shoes, water bottle, and gym bag the night before. Remove those little decision points. These are simple ways to make the good habit the easiest option when the moment arrives.
And of course, you can invert this principle to make bad behaviors more difficult. Add friction. If you watch too much TV, try unplugging it after each use. Requires an extra step to turn it back on. If that's not enough friction, take the batteries out of the remote and put them in another room. That really makes you think twice. Unplug your game console and put it away in a closet instead of leaving it ready to go. Hide the beer in the back of the fridge instead of the front. Delete distracting social media apps from your phone periodically.
Even a tiny bit of friction, just a few seconds of extra effort, can often be enough to prevent an unwanted behavior from starting. Imagine the cumulative impact over weeks and months of dozens of these small environmental tweaks. It adds up.
Habits also tend to occur at what Clear calls decisive moments, small choices that are like a fork in the road. Choosing to put on your running shoes or grabbing the TV remote, picking up an apple or reaching for the cookie jar. These moments set the trajectory for the next chunk of time, sending you toward either a productive or an unproductive path. Mastering these decisive moments is therefore crucial for mastering your habits.
And this leads us to perhaps the most practical and famous rule in the book, the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule is brilliantly simple. It states, when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Just 2 minutes. This rule helps you break down daunting, overwhelming habits like write a book or run a marathon into tiny, ridiculously easy gateway habits that you can do right now. So read before bed each night becomes read 1 page, do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat, study for class becomes open my notes, run 3 miles becomes tie my running shoes.
The point, obviously, isn't to only read 1 page or just tie your shoes and stop. The point is to master the habit of showing up, to make starting the behavior as easy as humanly possible, because a habit must be established before it can be improved. You can't optimize something that doesn't exist yet. If you can't learn the basic skill of showing up, consistently starting, then you have little hope of mastering the finer details later on. Instead of trying to engineer a perfect habit from the start, which often leads to failure, just do the easy thing on a more consistent basis. Get the reps in for starting. You have to standardize before you can optimize. Nail the first 2 minutes. That's the essence of making it easy. Okay, that brings us to part 6, the 4th law. Make it satisfying, getting that reward loop working for you. We'll start by looking at the inversion, which connects to law 3, making bad habits impossible, or at least making them difficult and unsatisfying. Roger Fisher, the Harvard law professor we mentioned earlier, proposed that shocking idea in the 1970s to prevent nuclear war. He suggested implanting the nuclear launch code capsule next to the heart of a volunteer military aide. To launch the missiles, the president would first have to literally take a butcher knife and kill that human being with his own hands to retrieve the code. This would make the consequence of launching taking a life brutally immediate, visceral, and tangible, not abstract.
It's a dramatic example, but it illustrates a powerful truth. Pain is an incredibly effective teacher, maybe the most effective. The more immediate and costly a mistake is, the faster you will learn from it and avoid repeating it. If a failure or a bad habit is relatively painless or the consequences are far off in the future, it's often ignored or rationalized away. The threat of a bad online review forces a plumber to show up on time and do good work. When consequences are swift and severe, people learn very quickly.
This is why commitment devices are so powerful. They introduce an immediate cost to bad behavior. Victor Hugo, facing that impossible deadline for The Hunchback of Notre Dame, used one. He locked away all his clothes except for a large, shapeless shawl. Lacking suitable clothing to go outside and socialize, he was effectively forced to remain in his study and write furiously. And it worked. The book was published 2 weeks early.
Commitment devices are choices you make in the present that lock in better behavior in the future. They help you leverage your good intentions before temptation strikes when your rational brain is in charge. Examples include buying food in individual packages to prevent mindless overeating, voluntarily asking to be banned from casinos if you have a gambling problem, or even leaving your wallet at home before a weight loss weigh-in to avoid buying celebratory junk food afterwards. My colleague, Nir Eyal, who writes about habit-forming technology, uses an outlet timer connected to his internet router. It automatically cuts off his Wi-Fi at 10 p.m. every night, physically preventing him from working late and signaling it's time for bed. Simple, but effective.
The key principle behind commitment devices is to make it require more work or cause immediate pain to get out of the good habit, or into the bad one, than to simply stick with your plan. If you're motivated to get in shape right now, schedule and pay for a yoga session or a personal trainer for next week. Pre-commitment. When the time comes, and maybe you don't feel like going, the only way to bail is to actively cancel, which requires effort and might cost you money or social standing. You've raised the stakes.
And the ultimate way to lock in behavior to make good habits almost unavoidable is to automate them whenever possible. Take the decision out of it completely. Think about James Ritty's incorruptible cashier, the very first cash register invented in the mid-1800s. It automatically locked the cash and receipts inside after each transaction, making employee theft practically impossible without leaving obvious evidence. John Patterson bought the rights, implemented them widely, and turned his struggling business around because it automated honesty, essentially.
These are what James Clear calls one-time actions that lock in good habits for the future. They require little effort up front, but deliver increasing value and time savings over the long run. Examples include buying a good water filter so clean water is always available, using smaller plates to naturally control portion sizes, setting up automatic savings transfers from your checking account, or unsubscribing from tempting email lists.
Technology can be fantastic for automating behaviors that might be too infrequent or complex to become ingrained habits, like automatically rebalancing your investment portfolio or paying recurring bills. But beware, technology can also automate bad habits just as easily. Think about autoplay on Netflix or YouTube. It makes continuing to binge watch the path of least resistance, requiring zero effort from you. It automates passive consumption.
Ultimately, automation, when used wisely, makes your good habits inevitable and your bad ones impossible. It's the ultimate way to lock in future behavior rather than relying solely on willpower in the heat of the moment.
Okay, now let's dive into Chapter 15 and what Clear calls the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is rewarded is repeated. What is punished is avoided. This seems incredibly intuitive, almost obvious, right? But the nuances, especially around timing, are really important. Let's unpack this with that fascinating hand-washing study conducted in Karachi, Pakistan. Researcher Stephen Luby found that people generally knew hand-washing was important for health, sure, but consistency was a huge problem. Why? Partly because the experience itself was just unsatisfying. Plain soap, maybe not much lather, no nice smell.
So they partnered with Procter & Gamble, a company that understands satisfaction. P&G supplied Safeguard soap to the community, which was specifically designed to foam easily and have a pleasant fragrance. It made the experience better. Instantly, hand-washing became a slightly more enjoyable, more rewarding experience. And the health results were dramatic. Diarrhea rates in the area fell by a remarkable 52%, just from better soap making the habit satisfying.
This beautifully illustrates the cardinal rule in action. We are much more likely to repeat a behavior when the experience itself is satisfying, even in a small way. Even minor sensory pleasures like the rich feel and appealing smell of nice soap, or the minty freshness after brushing your teeth signal to the brain, hey, this feels good, do this again next time. It reinforces the loop immediately. This is why Wrigley chewing gum revolutionized the industry by adding pleasant flavors like spearmint and juicy fruit in the early 1900s, turning a functional habit into a pleasurable one.
Now here's where it gets really interesting and kind of problematic for modern life. Our brains, the basic hardware we're running, didn't evolve for the world we live in now. Specifically, they didn't evolve for what scientists call a delayed return environment. Our Paleolithic ancestors lived in an immediate return environment. Their actions produce very quick feedback: hunt food, eat food, find water, drink water, see predator, run away. Consequences were immediate and tangible.
But we live in a fundamentally different world now. We exist primarily in a delayed return environment. You do a good job at work today, maybe you get a paycheck in 2 weeks. You exercise today, perhaps you won't be overweight next year. You save money now, maybe you'll have enough for retirement decades from now. The feedback loop is stretched out, sometimes over a lifetime. This creates what economists call time inconsistency or hyperbolic discounting. Basically, your brain naturally values the present far, far more than the future. Immediate rewards feel much more compelling than distant ones.
And this mismatch explains so much about why we struggle with certain behaviors. Why do people smoke if they know it increases the risk of lung cancer down the road? Why overeat when it increases the risk of obesity and related diseases later? Why have unsafe sex? Because the consequences of bad habits are often delayed, sometimes for years or decades. But the rewards, the nicotine rush, the taste of fatty food, the physical pleasure, are immediate, right now. Conversely, the costs of good habits, the effort of exercising, the discomfort of saving money, the focus required for deep work are often felt in the present, while their substantial benefits are delayed far into the future.
Exactly. Success in nearly every field requires the ability to override this natural tendency and delay gratification. We know that people who are better at delaying gratification tend to have higher SAT scores, lower levels of substance abuse, better health outcomes, etc. The famous marshmallow test demonstrated this years ago. But our default wiring is to choose for present you, who wants immediate comfort, pleasure, and ease, rather than making choices that benefit future you, who dreams of being fitter, wealthier, or more knowledgeable.
So the solution isn't necessarily to fight human nature head-on with brute willpower, which often fails. Instead, Clear suggests we work with human nature. We need to find ways to attach some form of immediate gratification to our long-term beneficial habits, and perhaps some form of immediate pain or cost to our bad ones. Hack the reward system.
But how do you make avoidance satisfying? That seems tricky. It's hard to feel good about not doing something, right? Like not eating the donut or not buying the expensive gadget. Where's the reward? The clever solution is to make avoidance visible. Give yourself immediate feedback for the thing you didn't do. For example, create a dedicated savings account online and give it a specific motivating name, maybe European Vacation Fund or New Leather Jacket Fund. Then, every time you successfully resist a frivolous purchase, you were tempted by maybe skipping that daily $5 latte, deciding not to buy another streaming subscription, resisting an impulse buy online, immediately transfer that exact amount of money into that special savings account. It provides an immediate reward. You literally see your savings for that desired goal grow right away. You're making it satisfying to do nothing, to resist.
That's brilliant. And eventually, Clear notes the intrinsic rewards of the good habit, like having more energy from eating well, feeling less stress from meditating, enjoying better focus from avoiding distractions, will start to kick in and become rewarding in themselves. Your identity shifts, and that becomes the primary reinforcer. I'm the type of person who eats healthy. But adding that immediate artificial reinforcement helps bridge the crucial gap until those long-term natural rewards arrive and become self-sustaining. It keeps you in the game.
This brings us directly to the power of habit tracking discussed in Chapter 16. It's a classic technique for making habits satisfying. Trent Dursmid, a rookie stockbroker in Canada, famously used what he called the paperclip strategy back in 1993. He started each morning with 2 jars on his desk, one filled with 120 paper clips, the other empty. After each sales call he made, he would simply move 1 paper clip from the full jar to the empty jar. Simple visual progress. Within 18 months, this simple tracking system helped propel him to bring $5 million to his firm, and he was earning $75,000 a year, a huge amount back then for a 24-year-old.
A habit tracker is essentially just a simple way to get an immediate visual measure of whether you did a habit or not. The most basic form is just putting an X on a calendar each day you stick to your desired routine. Building a chain. Benjamin Franklin famously tracked his progress on 13 personal virtues daily in a small notebook, and comedian Jerry Seinfeld reportedly uses or used a similar method with a big wall calendar to never break the chain of writing jokes every single day. The visual streak becomes motivating.
Habit tracking is incredibly powerful for several reasons, hitting multiple laws of behavior change. First, it makes the behavior obvious. The tracker itself acts as a visual cue reminding you to act. Research consistently shows that tracking things like food intake or exercise significantly improves results, likely just from the increased awareness. It also keeps you honest with yourself. Second, it makes it attractive. Seeing your progress, the growing chain of X's, the paperclips moving over is inherently motivating. Small wins feed your desire to keep going. It's visual proof of your hard work paying off. Third, and most relevant to this law, it makes it satisfying. There's a little dopamine hit, a feeling of accomplishment each time you cross off an item on your list or mark that X on the calendar. It feels good to watch your results grow, and if it feels good, you're more likely to endure the effort.
And inevitably, life happens, and you'll miss a day. You'll break the chain. What then? Does it all fall apart? James Clear offers a simple but powerful rule here. Never miss twice. You miss one day, prioritize getting back on track immediately the next day. Don't let one missed workout turn into two, then three, then none. Missing once is an accident. It happens to everyone. Missing twice is the beginning of a new, undesirable habit. Stop the slide quickly.
Right. The data often shows that lost days or zeros hurt your progress more than successful days help you. Momentum matters. So the key is don't put up a zero if you can help it, but if you do, never put up 2 zeros in a row. Get back on the horse.
However, there's an important pitfall of measurement to be aware of, related to something called Goodhart's Law. Goodhart's Law basically states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Meaning, we tend to optimize purely for the number we're tracking, sometimes leading to unintended or even negative behaviors that don't serve the original goal. If success in a company is measured solely by billable hours, people might work long, inefficient hours instead of focusing on meaningful, valuable work. If your only goal is 10,000 steps, you might just pace around your living room instead of doing exercise that actually improves your health.
So numbers and tracking are useful tools, absolutely, but don't overvalue them or let them distort the real purpose of the habit. The most important things in life are often unquantifiable.
And finally, for this law, in Chapter 17, we look at accountability, and habit contracts the inversion of making it satisfying, which is make it unsatisfying. Just as immediate pleasure sustains a behavior, immediate pain or cost helps avoid one. We often repeat bad habits because on some level they serve us or feel good in the moment. To break them, you need to increase the speed or severity of the punishment or cost. Make it hurt right now. No gap between the action and the consequence.
This is where the habit contract comes in. It's a formal way to introduce consequences. It's basically a verbal or written agreement where you clearly state your commitment to a particular habit and outline the specific punishment that will occur if you fail to follow through. Then, crucially, you find one or two accountability partners, people you respect, to sign off on the contract with you and hold you to it.
Brian Harris, an entrepreneur Clear mentions, used a detailed weight loss contract to finally get serious. He listed specific daily eating and exercise habits he had to follow. If he failed, the punishments escalated from having to dress up uncomfortably for work the next day to eventually having to pay his personal trainer $200 for each missed workout. Ouch. His wife and his trainer both signed the contract as accountability partners. This clarifies expectations and, importantly, adds a significant social cost to failure. You don't want to let them down or look bad.
Even without a formal written contract, simply having an accountability partner you check in with regularly can be very incredibly powerful. Comedian Margaret Cho apparently uses one for her goal of writing a joke or song every single day. Just knowing someone else is watching, someone is expecting you to report on your progress, motivates you to avoid being seen as untrustworthy or lazy. You're not just feeling yourself anymore, you're potentially feeling someone else too. It makes the costs of violating your promises public and painful.
Okay, moving into part 7. Advanced tactics for mastery. Going beyond the basics. We start with chapter 18. The truth about talent, when genes matter and when they don't. Nature and nurture again. Consider the physical differences between two Olympic champions. Michael Phelps, the swimmer, and Hicham El Guerrouj, the middle distance runner. Phelps is tall with a long torso and relatively short legs, ideal for swimming. El Guerrouj is very short and incredibly light, perfect for running. Phelps' build would make him a terrible elite runner, and El Guerrouj would likely struggle immensely as a world-class swimmer. Their bodies are optimized for different tasks.
This clearly illustrates that competence is highly context-dependent. What works in one field is a disadvantage in another. Genes don't determine your destiny, not entirely, but they do strongly influence your areas of opportunity, where you're likely to excel with effort. They predispose you to certain strengths and weaknesses, but they don't predetermine your ultimate success. Environment and effort still matter hugely. The key, Clear argues, is to direct your effort toward areas that both excite you and naturally match your inherent skills and predispositions. Align your ambition with your ability. Play a game you can win.
Our unique cluster of genetic traits also predisposes us to a particular personality, often described by the Big Five spectrums. Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These traits have clear biological underpinnings and influence how easily or naturally certain behaviors come to you. An introvert might find sales calls draining. A highly conscientious person might find sticking to schedules easier. You're simply more likely to enjoy and stick with things that come more easily to you, where you feel competent. And that initial talent or aptitude often leads to early competence, which brings praise and encouragement, which fuels further progress and opens up more opportunities, creating a powerful virtuous cycle. Work with your nature, not constantly against it.
So it's worth asking yourself honestly, where do I seem to get greater returns than the average person for the same amount of effort? Or what activities make me feel alive and energized like time just disappears? What comes naturally to me? For James Clear himself, he noticed his writing quickly found an audience and resonated with people much faster than his previous ventures. That feedback motivated him to keep going because he felt authentic and effective in that domain.
This brings up an important practical question, though. What if you feel like you can't find a game where the odds seem stacked in your favor? What if you feel average at most things? Clear suggests, brilliantly I think, that if you can't find such a game, you should try to create one by combining your skills. Scott Adams, the Dilbert cartoonist, is the prime example he uses. Adams recognized he could draw better than most business people, but he wasn't a truly great artist. He was funnier than most people, but not elite stand-up comedian funny. But the unique combination of his average drawing skills, his better-than-average and relatable office humor, and his deep background in the corporate business world made his particular skill set incredibly rare and valuable. He created his own niche where he could dominate.
Specialization, or unique combination, is a powerful way to win, even if you're not naturally gifted across the board in one single area. It's like the old saying, boiling water softens a potato but hardens an egg. You can't control whether you're fundamentally a potato or an egg in a given situation. But you can try to choose to play a game where it's better to be hard, like an egg, or soft, like a potato.
If you can find a more favorable environment or redefine the game, you can potentially transform a situation from one where the odds are against you to one where they are suddenly tilted in your favor.
Ultimately, our genes don't eliminate the need for hard work. They clarify what to work hard on for the best return on effort. They guide, they don't dictate. Once we understand our strengths or potential strengths, we know where to best invest our limited time and energy.
And it's far more productive and fulfilling, Clear argues, to focus on fulfilling your own potential within your context, rather than constantly comparing yourself to others who might be playing a completely different genetic or environmental game. Pick habits that align with your personality and skills. Play your own game.
Okay, next up, Chapter 19. The Goldilocks Rule, how to stay motivated in life and work, especially once a habit is established. Think about the comedian Steve Martin's incredibly long journey to overnight success. It took about 18 years. He spent roughly 10 years just learning the craft, 4 years refining his unique act, and then finally 4 years of wild success where he was the biggest comedian on the planet. He apparently expanded his stand-up routine by only a minute or two each year, always carefully balancing brand new, risky material with his guaranteed laughs to keep the audience engaged but also keep himself challenged.
This perfectly highlights a crucial finding from psychology about motivation. We experience peak motivation and engagement when we are working on tasks of just manageable difficulty. Not too easy, not too hard. These are tasks that are roughly estimated at about 4% beyond our current ability or comfort zone. This sweet spot is known as the Goldilocks Rule. Just right.
When you're starting a new habit, the key is to keep it easy, like the 2-minute rule. Get it established. But once a habit is established, it's important to continue to advance, to make small improvements and introduce new challenges, to keep yourself engaged. You need to nudge the difficulty up slightly. These little steps forward keep you from getting bored and ensure you're making progress.
And if you can consistently hit that Goldilocks zone, challenging but achievable, you significantly increase your chances of achieving a flow state. That's that magical feeling psychologists describe, where you're completely immersed in an activity, time seems to disappear, and you're performing at your peak. It's intrinsically rewarding.
But here's a major challenge. The greatest threat to long-term success is often not failure, but boredom.
Yeah, this is so true. As habits become routine, as they become automatic, they inevitably lose their novelty and initial satisfaction. The shine wears off. We then get tempted to seek new strategies or jump to the next shiny object too quickly, abandoning perfectly good systems simply out of a craving for novelty or because we're bored with the repetition.
A weightlifting coach once told James Clear,
something profound. The difference between the best athletes and everyone else often comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over and over.
That really resonates. Professionals in any field stick to the schedule. They show up and do the work even when they're bored, even when it's monotonous, even when they don't feel like it. Amateurs, on the other hand, tend to let life get in the way. They only practice when they feel inspired or motivated. It's the ability to keep going, to push through when the work isn't exciting, when it's annoying or painful or draining, that truly makes the difference between good and great in the long run. Don't just be a fair-weather exerciser or writer or whatever your pursuit is. Show up consistently.
While boredom is a challenge, Clear does note that introducing elements of variable rewards can sometimes help. Think slot machines. Variable rewards can amplify existing cravings and reduce boredom by hitting that sweet spot of desire where you succeed roughly 50% of the time. You need just enough winning to feel satisfaction and keep going, and just enough wanting or uncertainty to maintain desire and interest.
And finally, in Chapter 20, we examine the downside of creating good habits and the crucial need for reflection and review. Habits, as we've established, create the essential foundation for mastery in any skill. They make the basic movements and decisions automatic, freeing up your limited mental space to focus on the more advanced details and nuances, whether you're playing chess, performing surgery, or even dribbling a basketball.
However, habits do have a potential downside. They can lead to mindless repetition and a decreased sensitivity to feedback. You stop paying close attention. You might assume you're still improving simply because you're gaining experience, putting in the hours, when in reality, you might just be reinforcing your current and possibly flawed or suboptimal habits over and over. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent.
Some research even suggests that performance in certain skills can actually plateau or even slightly decline after a certain level of mastery or automaticity is reached, precisely because complacency sets in. You stop actively looking for ways to improve.
So, for truly elite performance, or even just continuous improvement, you need a more nuanced approach. A combination of automatic habits for the fundamentals, plus periods of deliberate practice focused on improvement. Once one habit is mastered and becomes automatic, you need to consciously return to effort and focus on building the next layer, the next improvement. Mastery is a process of progressively layering these improvements on top of each other. It never really ends.
The antidote to this complacency, the way to ensure your habits continue to serve you well and don't lead to stagnation, is to establish a regular system for reflection and review. You need to check in periodically. Without structured reflection, we tend to make excuses, rationalize our shortcomings, and even lie to ourselves about our progress. There's no objective process for determining whether we're actually performing better or worse over time.
Think of Pat Riley's career best effort CBE program he implemented with the LA Lakers basketball team back in 1986. He meticulously tracked each player's key statistics, comparing them to their own historical bests, going back as far as high school. Then he asked each player for just a 1% improvement over their personal best during the upcoming season, not just in obvious stats like points or rebounds, but also in crucial unsung hero deeds, like diving for loose balls or helping teammates. Small, measurable improvements. The Lakers responded incredibly, reportedly improving significantly as a team, and went on to win back-to-back NBA championships. That system of tracking and review was key.
Top performers across all kinds of fields use reflection consistently. Eliud Kipchoge, arguably the greatest marathoner ever, takes detailed notes after every single practice session to find areas for improvement. Swimmer Katie Ledecky logs her wellness metrics and keeps track of other swimmers' times. Comedian Chris Rock constantly tests new jokes and meticulously notes audience reactions to refine his material. Many successful executives keep decision journals to analyze their past choices.
James Clear himself practices this diligently. He performs an annual review every December, reflecting honestly on what went well that year, what didn't, and what key lessons he learned. And then, 6 months later, around summer, he conducts an integrity report, where he revisits his core values and critically assesses how well he's actually living in accordance with them, asking himself if he's holding himself to a high standard.
These are crucial periods of deliberate refinement that prevent that gradual slide into complacency or mediocrity. They provide a regular, scheduled reminder to check alignment, upgrade habits as needed, and maintain his desired identity.
This also brings up an important related question for you, the listener, to consider. How flexible is your identity? Venture capitalist Paul Graham advises entrepreneurs to keep your identity small. Don't tie your entire sense of self-worth to one single role or achievement.
Right. If you tie everything you are to being, say, the star athlete or the successful CEO or the soldier, then the inevitable loss or transition away from that specific role can be absolutely devastating to your sense of self. Progress and resilience often require continuously editing your beliefs about yourself, upgrading and expanding your identity so it's less brittle, more adaptable. Maybe you're not just an athlete, but a mentally tough person who loves a physical challenge that's more flexible.
The holy grail of habit change, Clear concludes, isn't about finding one single 1% improvement that magically transforms everything. It's about the cumulative effect of 1,000 of them. It's a whole bunch of atomic habits stacking up, each one a fundamental unit of the overall system you're building.
In the beginning, these small improvements can seem insignificant, almost meaningless, like that ice cube not melting. But gradually, as you continue to layer them, consistently showing up and making those tiny adjustments, the scales of life slowly begin to tilt in your favor. Eventually, if you stick with the process long enough, you hit a tipping point, and suddenly it starts to feel easier to stick with the good habits than to fall back into the old ones. The weight of the entire system you've built is finally working for you, not against you.
That's a fantastic summary. What we've really seen today from our deep dive into James Clear's Atomic Habits is that lasting change isn't about those grand gestures or massive, unsustainable overhauls we often attempt.
No, it's about the consistent accumulation of small, almost imperceptible actions, day in, day out. It's fundamentally about building an unbreakable system that naturally propels you forward, not just chasing a singular, often fleeting goal.
That's exactly right. And to help you, our listener, implement these profound insights from James Clear's Atomic Habits in your own life, here's a brief action plan based on the core learnings. Consider this part of the practical toolkit from the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. First, start with awareness. Make it obvious. Use a habit scorecard. Just take a day and meticulously list out your current habits: waking up, checking phone, coffee, commute, etc. Rate each one: positive, plus, negative, or neutral. You simply cannot change what you don't acknowledge first. Second, design your environment. Make it obvious and easy. For good habits, make the cues highly visible. Put your vitamins right next to the coffee maker. Leave your running shoes by the door. For bad habits, make the cues invisible. Keep tempting snacks off the counter and hidden away. Use website blockers. Consider the one space, one use rule. Maybe have a specific chair, only for reading, not for scrolling your phone. Third, leverage implementation intentions and habit stacking. Make it obvious. Don't be vague. Plan exactly when and where you will perform a behavior using that simple formula. I'll behavior at time and location, and link new habits directly to established ones. After current habit, e.g. brushing my teeth, I will new habit, example, floss one tooth. Fourth, make it attractive. Use temptation bundling. Pair something you need to do with something you want to do. Only listen to my favorite podcast while exercising. Join a group or community where your desired behavior is the accepted norm and you share common ground. Find your tribe and actively reframe your mindset. Catch yourself saying, I have to, and consciously change it to, I get to. Fifth, reduce friction. Make it easy. Make your good habits the absolute path of least resistance. The less effort required, the more likely you are to do it, especially when tired or unmotivated. Implement the 2-minute rule. Start any new habit by doing it for less than 2 minutes. Just show up. And use commitment devices like prepaying for a class or automation like automatic savings transfers to lock in future good behavior and make bad behavior practically impossible, or at least much harder. Unplug that TV. Sixth, make it immediately satisfying. Make it satisfying. Find ways to add a hit of immediate pleasure or reward to actions that have long-term benefits. Maybe a small healthy treat after a workout. Make avoidance visible setup that skipped purchases savings account and transfer the money immediately. And diligently track your habits. Use an app, a journal, a calendar to see your progress visually and feel the satisfaction of maintaining the streak. And remember, never miss twice. And seventh, reflect and refine. Mastery. Don't just set habits and forget them. Regularly, maybe weekly or monthly, review your habits and your progress. Are they still serving you? Do they need adjustment? Don't fall into the trap of mindless repetition. Instead, seek continuous improvement to ensure your habits are always aligned with your goals and identity.
That's a great, actionable summary. And it really brings us to a final important question for you to consider as you move forward. In what specific area of your life could consciously accumulating 1,000 small, consistent votes, those tiny atomic habits for the person you truly want to become, finally tip the scales decisively in your favor? Where could that tipping point happen for you?
Thank you for joining us today. Buy the book at the 1-Hour Guide website for more business insights.